Fishing trips anywhere, anytime. FishingBooker.com. Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy. Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
Imagine a landscape where the rugged beauty of the Borderlands meet the timeless blend of Mexican and American cuisine, where every trail and shadow holds a story of survival, tradition, and connection to the land. In this episode, we'll delve into a stirring new book that explores these very themes, inviting readers to venture into the Borderlands and uncover the secrets that lie just beyond the familiar. From Laredo to Tijuana, this work is a compelling innovation to rediscover the foods and traditions that define the Mexican-American border.
Join Justin Townsend and the Harvesting Nature crew as they explore the world of cooking wild fish and game while sharing recipes, tips, tricks, and lessons learned from their pursuit of wild food. We sure hope you ate before the show, 'cause you're gonna leave hungry. This is the Wild Fish and Game Podcast.
So today's guest is a James Beard Award-winning chef, author, podcaster, and outdoorsman who runs the popular Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook website. He's written 6 books: Hunt, Gather, Cook, Buck, Buck, Moose, Duck, Duck, Goose, Pheasant, Quail, Cottontail, Hook, Line, and Supper, and a 6th book, Borderlands, which we'll be talking about today. Hank Shaw, welcome back to the Wild Fishing Game Podcast.
Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, it's always good to chat. I feel like we're doing it more and more as time goes on, which is great. I got the book in the mail yesterday.
Yay.
Super excited about it. I flipped through it last night, and man, it is absolutely beautiful. All the food looks amazing. I love the stories and the narration. The photography, phenomenal.
Thank you.
And it's just great. I really enjoy it. I know, Adam, you're probably itching to get yours.
Yeah, I'm waiting anxiously for mine.
I did send you one, but
Yeah.
I have to just basically hand send them to Canada because right now I'm having an issue with Amazon and Amazon.ca, which I'm hoping to resolve at some point. But as of now, it's in flux.
Okay.
But yours is on the way.
Oh, perfect. Sweet. I'm waiting anxiously for it.
So, as we talk about Borderlands, and we're going to dive a little bit into this, can you tell us a little bit about it? What inspired you to write it?
Sure. I guess the initial beginning of it occurred when I basically moved to Sacramento 20 some odd years ago. And having lived in lots of other places before that, this was the first place that I really was kind of steeped in Mexicanity, for lack of a better term. You can't avoid Spanish or Mexican food. It's part of the culture of Sacramento. And then things really started to take steam and gather momentum once I became pretty good friends with my friend Patricio Wise, who is a restaurant owner and chef in the Sacramento area. And so hanging out with him, and I just started this really intense desire to learn more and then more and then more. And parallel to that, I'd been traveling the border just to hunt and fish and forage and do that kind of thing just on my own. And so very quickly, Patricio and I decided that we were going to do a Northern Mexican cookbook. And then, but that sort of morphed into Borderlands because Patricio's busy. He's got 2 restaurants now. And so he wasn't really able to fully be a co-author. He did write the foreword, so that was pretty cool. But so he gave me lots of sort of tips and pointers and do this. And then we traveled together a few times. And it basically created this, quest to really capture the nature of the borderlands from, where the Rio Grande empties into the Gulf all the way out to Tijuana and San Diego. And I changed it from like a Mexican book to a Borderlands book for a couple of reasons. One, the dominant reason is because I spent so much time on our side of the border, typically hunting or fishing or and sometimes just gathering. I mean, there's mushroom hunting that can be pretty excellent in Arizona after the monsoon rains. And then, of course, you're eating there all the time. And then once I learned Spanish, I actually learned Spanish for this project back in 2018. Once you can have a conversation in Spanish, everything completely opens up. And your ability to read Spanish and talk to people and really understand things better, it's made it really just made the book what it is. And so this is essentially an idiosyncratic journey. It's a personal journey from east to west on both sides of the border, and it's some of the highlights that I found and some of the quirky stuff and some of there's a few standards there that you kind of would have to have, but it is there's really nothing like it.
It definitely, in flipping through it, I agree with you. It's pretty unique in the perspective that it brings, and I think different from your other books. What brought about that change and sort of deviating from the wild food space a little bit?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, it doesn't totally deviate from the wild food space. So, but I think the simplest answer is the simplest answer. I've written an entire book on waterfowl, an entire book on big game, an entire book on small game, an entire book on fish and seafood. I mean, what am I going to have? Like bears or woodchucks or something else? I've kind of covered it all, and I may actually update some of these older books with new recipes and techniques in the future, but I've covered all of those subjects pretty heavily. So where to go next? And this absolute obsession, fascination with that region really lent itself to kind of a half pivot.
Mm-hmm.
So there's plenty of fish and there's plenty of game and there's plenty of edible wild plants in this book, but it's not strictly that.
I think you mentioned that the barrel cactus. I saw that. Mm-hmm. Those are so cool. Look like little pineapples.
They do. They're fun.
Did you feel that that the border, whether it's physical or cultural or culinary, shaped the identity of the people in the cuisine you ended up writing about?
Very much, very much. I mean, they call themselves los fronterizos, and they're really neither fully Mexican nor fully American. So they are really people of the border, and the seamless integration of English and Spanish and of cooking techniques and of ingredients. The food is different on either side, but it's like first cousins. And one of the coolest things I saw, especially in Texas, if you're in Texas, south of Interstate 10, there's a real good chance that you're going to meet somebody who might have a full-on Texas accent. Just imagine it, and it is that. But then that person will switch into Spanish and have completely perfect Spanish, not accented at all. Whereas if you meet a sort of a lot of Texans north of Interstate 10, they'll carry that accent through to their Spanish. So "Como se llama," where you would never hear that in somebody from Brownsville or Eagle Pass or something like that. So that was a really interesting thing, and I've seen that in Spanish as well, where I've seen Spanish speakers and then they'll flip into English, and then their English actually has an accent. So they'll actually sound a little Texan when they speak English. And so that's this kind of shifting in between worlds culinarily and culturally is absolutely fascinating.
Did you find that when your level of Spanish kind of grew, people opened up to you a little more when you were doing the research for the book?
Yeah, there's a language thing called code switching. And when I get in the groove and when I can actually have a conversation in Spanish, they won't code switch. So what that means is, and you may have done this before, where if you know a second language or a third or whatever, if you know multiple languages and you're talking with someone and that person is struggling in, say, English, but you happen to know that they speak Spanish, I can code switch into Spanish, and then the conversation completely changes. So the opposite also happens, where you'll be talking to someone like a Mexican, for example, and you can be speaking in Spanish, and if you if you stumble, if you're slow, and then that Mexican knows English, they'll switch to English to finish the conversation. And it sounds like it's, rude or whatever, but it really is a kind of a human need to increase the fluency of communication between two people. So knowing more Spanish, reduce that code switching and let them be more comfortable speaking the language that they were born with.
That's very interesting. I'm living part-time in Quebec right now and struggling with French, so I feel that every single day. Yeah.
It's not really French in Quebec.
Yeah, it's its whole own thing.
It's okay. I'm live in DC and I struggle with it with English, where people will code switch to English for my worst English.
Right?
But so obviously right now the border's kind of a hot topic. Do you think that one, the timing, but then two, the food and storytelling brings sort of an opportunity to build bridges and promote some of the empathy for some of the issues that are existing on both sides right now?
That's my hope. My hope is that people. Well, let's stop for a second and say, like, most of the issues with the border um, really don't involve Mexicans. Like, I don't hear a lot of people bitching and moaning about Mexicans coming over. It's other countries coming through Mexico. So Mexicans, obviously, that's the border where they're coming over. But I think there's an increasing knowledge and increasing understanding that Mexicans, like actual Mexicans, they're our friends, they're our neighbors, and so that I think a lot of the frustration with the border is masses of people from some other country like Venezuela or Haiti or China or whatever coming through the border. So that's a piece of it that I think will mitigate people if somebody decides that they're going to have a negative reaction to this book. They're like, well, it's not really Mexicans, it's these other people, and that might help. But what I really hope is that people read this book and get a chance to see the border. That's why there's so many photos in it. It really puts you there. It it immerses you in this region, and you can get a very good sense of how vast it is, how beautiful it is, how stark it is, and that the people who live there are very special. And my mom raised me very, very young with the idea of nothing has any power or nothing can really exist in your brain unless it's named, unless you have a name for it. So being able to name places and name people and name dishes and name ideas in this Borderlands book gives those things power with the person who reads the book. And so my hope is that after reading it, you'd be like, yeah, it's a pretty damn good region. We shouldn't mess it up.
I think too, with food being such a great common language amongst people, I think that's a great perspective to have with it. Is I think it breaks down those barriers naturally because you get to share a meal, but then creating content and recipes and stories and adventures around it that people can relate with, I think on a very personal level, opens up the door for, just like you said, for somebody to be like, hey, this is a really great place. Not only, I think we should like keep it intact and appreciate it for what it is, but maybe like I need to dig in more personally and learn more about this. And I think that can be a springboard for so much more that I think is what we need right now.
And there's definitely something that goes to show as well with the blend of the two north and south of the border. I think with your book just even being called Borderlands, it's talking about a region that's not simply south of the border, north of the border. It's a blend of cultures and people. Like it doesn't, that border is an artificial, is artificial. There's no direct line in between these people. They share so much. And I think it's kind of good for people to see that and remember that as well. That it's not just black and white.
In many cases, the border moved and they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you did quite a bit of travel for this as you were researching and documenting and all that. What was probably like one of the most surprising things that you discovered that kind of like, either caught you off guard or brought about like a pontifical moment, as you may?
I think one piece of it, and this kind of relates to what we're talking about. We can talk about the food all we want, but the one thing that struck me culturally was, especially in northern Mexico, there are vast numbers of people who visibly look like the three of us, who are 100% Mexican, and with names like Reinhardt or something like that. And so that I think the common perception, and I even had it to some extent, is that there's a Mexican has a certain look, or a Mexican has a certain last name. And the president of Mexico is a really wonderful example of not so much. Her name is Claudia Sheinbaum, and so that it really started making me think about what is a Mexican, what is it to be Mexican, and that was kind of a thing that I don't know that I expected to really contemplate that deeply walking into this book. Now, from a food perspective, I think the varied cuisine, and I think the presence of wild food in the cuisine pleasantly surprised me. Now, I had an idea. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I went into the book, but I think at every turn there was some new amazing product or preparation or tradition that was like, damn, that's good. and and then there's like sort of one-off kind of fun things where there's an analog here in the United States, but they've been doing something like it in Mexico forever. Like my greatest example of that are coyotas. And coyotas are a round, flat pastry with some melted sugar or jam or something inside. And if you're thinking about that, it sounds a little bit like a Pop-Tart. It's because it's basically a Mexican Pop-Tart. And they're really good, and they're in the book. And like I have to do coyotas, and they're kind of the signature, I don't know what you would call pastry, cookie, whatever treat of Sonora. But you can find them all over. I've eaten them in Nuevo León as well. So there's stuff like that. And then I think another surprising thing was the deep presence of wild food kind of on the regular on both sides of the border. Dove hunting and quail hunting and deer hunting are very important to that region. And then if you talk to Indigenous people, the use of wild foods there is profound because if you know what you're looking for and you know what to do, there are tons of delicious edible plants in deserts. And a lot, I live in Minnesota now, and I talk to people and they're like, what? There's nothing in the desert. That's crazy. You're going to die. I'm like, well, I mean, you might, but but there's all kinds of stuff that you can find. And I'd been exploring that for 20 years. And so I had to put that in the book.
Did you find any really surprising processes or techniques when it came to wild game that you had never seen before in your experience?
A few. I mean, I've been doing this kind of thing for a long time. So one thing that I thought was really cool was two things with venison. One is I watched a guy take an entire backstrap of a deer. And so imagine a length of backstrap. So it's maybe 18 inches long, and it's a big cylinder, right? So he used a pocket knife, and he used his pocket knife to slice that round cylinder into a thin, flat sheet. So it's like slice, and so basically he started. The first slice was the thickness of the final sheet, and then he essentially, with a pocket knife, rolled it out into one giant sheet with almost no holes, which is amazing. And then he salted it and threw it on the clothesline and put a little like net over it so the flies wouldn't get all over it. And that's how he made jerky.
Oh, wow.
Because it's 1,000,000 degrees and dry.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense, but holy smokes.
Right? It was super impressive. And then another one that is in the book is there in Tamaulipas. There's all really throughout the Gulf region, there is this thing called salpicón. And salpicón just kind of means mishmash. But in this context, there's a traditional venison dish, and it's a cold venison salad because, as you know, the Gulf gets hot and sticky and gross in the summertime. So this dish is essentially slow braised. It's like my barbacoa. So it's like a slow braised shredded venison that's now chilled, and it's tossed with a little olive oil. See, olive oil is a big deal in the Gulf region because they can grow olives there. It's Veracruz more than Tamaulipas, but it's there. And it's so imagine a little bit like a pico de gallo plus shredded venison plus cucumbers plus radishes plus shredded cabbage. And so it's like this crunchy, rich, cooling salad that is absolutely fantastic on a hot day. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty rad way to cook venison. And so I had to put it in the book.
That's super cool. That's a really cool way. Yeah, and you don't often see wild game used in cold dishes very often. So it's like really cool.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at Polestar.com.
One thing I was going to ask you, and this builds off of that, is just like writ large, I guess we'll shift a little bit into food, but as you see cooks and chefs and writers sort of travel the world and even really experienced ones, I think you come into contact with information, ingredients, techniques, and things that you've never encountered before. So my, I guess, baseline question off that is like, what did you add to your culinary tool chest? What are the cool things that you learned and saw along the way?
I think probably the biggest takeaway for Norteño cooking, and this includes it on both sides of the border. So the primacy of char is how I would put it. Fire and smoke and char are so incredibly important, not only to the region but to the cuisine. Because in deserts, it's fire that rejuvenates soil. It's not rot. It's rot in the Pacific Northwest because it rains and everything rots and turns into soil. In dry places, it's fire, and fire is what rejuvenates soil and turns and ash becomes topsoil, and it's reflected in the cooking. So yes, there's lots of dishes that involve boiling and pots and things like that, but grilling, outdoor cooking with direct fire and just a little bit of burnt. There's a chef in Argentina named Francis Mallmann, who's very, very famous for live fire cooking. And he has this essay about charred and burntness, which really holds true with Northern Mexican food as well, that it's the sazon, it's the flavor of the North. And I think it's like every time I see a tortilla that somebody, makes, I don't know, a carne asada taco or something on. Every time I see a tortilla that has no char on it, that has no blackening, that has none of that, I get a little sad. It's like, no, it's not what it's, no, it's especially if you're doing something that Norteño that you especially need, you have to have that blackening. Not all, I mean, you don't want to burn the shit out of it, but I mean, you need that element of char in the dish. Otherwise it's just not going to taste right. So that was one. I think another one that I knew, but it was strengthened. The French know it with pesto, the Vietnamese know it with many of their sauces, and the Mexicans know it with many of their salsas, is the power of the pound. And you can take that any way you'd like. But the power of the pound, in a culinary sense at least, is a salsa or a sauce or something. Something it's different. So if you shear it with a blender and whip it with blades, it is not the same thing as pounding it into a sauce or a paste. You're breaking cell walls, you're releasing aromatics, you're doing so many different things to that food item with the crushing and grinding action that you just don't get with cutting action. And so a lot of people, including me, will use blenders all the time to make a smooth sauce or whatever, and it works a lot of times. But if I really want it to be special, like if I'm making a really serious salsa that I want people to really understand, like the best example is it combines both of these things we're talking about, char and crushing, is salsa tatamara, and it's basically, think of the ingredients of a pico. So it's roasted chilies, grilled tomatoes, grilled onions, grilled garlic, an herb, and lime juice. And there's also variations, but all of the things that can be grilled need to be grilled. And so you build this salsa in the molcajete. So you start with salt and the garlic, and you grind that into a paste. Then you add the onions, you grind till that's sort of liquidy pasty. And then you add the tomatoes, and then you add the so it sort of it builds, and it's all a process of grinding plus char. So there's little black flecks in it. You taste as you go, and then you add. I always add 2 herbs to it: Mexican oregano, and we can talk about that because Mexican oregano is not the same thing as regular oregano. And then I'll usually add cilantro, unless I'm growing something like pipicho, which is a super fun Mexican herb. So that's not really super common in the north, but it does exist. And then so you get this explosion. It looks like a regular salsa, but people eat it like, Jesus Christ, this is good. And that's why you get the combination of the flame and the combination of that pounding action that you would not get in a blender.
That's cool.
Very interesting. I was going to ask, so talking about Mexican oregano then, what's the flavor profile versus like a Greek or Italian oregano?
Well, number one, it's an entirely different plant. It's a different genus entirely. So if you study the science of food, there are various terpenes and phenols that cause aroma and that cause something to smell like something, which is why, for example, hot ponderosa pine bark smells like butterscotch because it contains the same chemical elements as butterscotch. And so the reason why these 2 oreganos are called oregano is because they have a very similar, there's similar things going on. And so what you get is a bit more floral with the Mexican oreganos because they're in the verbena family. So they're like Lipia graveolens is a very common one, but there's a bunch of them. There's like Lipia bustamante, and there's a whole bunch of others, and each of them are a different plant, but they've been used as oregano. And then there's a thing called oreganillo, which goes all the way into West Texas and New Mexico. That grows wild. So it's super cool because it's like, I'm going to go find my oregano plant. Like, yes, it's just like Italy. And the flavor of these, it's a bit like thyme, savory, and oregano all mixed. And then there's one that you can find in Nuevo León that has a kind of a weird floral bubblegummy smell to it. Okay. It sounds gross, but it's really amazing.
Very cool.
I'm trying to, didn't we use the Mexican oregano at Pig Camp, right? In the
Yes,
mezcal.
We did. Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, that turned out good. Prickly pear.
And that was just like standard old Mexican oregano. Like if I bring the good stuff, like it'll be a little different.
I like that. I think, where do you see a division in the uses of the 2? Well, I guess obviously in the cuisine, but a standard oregano, where would you want to use one and not the other, or vice versa?
I mean, I never use standard oregano in Mexican food, like ever. It's not hard to find. Like every Latin market in America and Canada is going to have Mexican oregano. It's easily buyable online. If you're going to make food out of my book, you need to buy Mexican oregano. I mean, you don't have to. Like, no babies will die if you but I mean, if you want to, like, it's an easy step to get closer to authenticity.
Are there any other? There's a lot of ingredients in your book that span, a large geographic region, but any other like must-haves that are like, I need to keep this in my pantry?
I would say Mexican oregano because it'll last a year. Dry chili piquins, which you can also get in Latin markets, and chiltepín and chili piquin are wild chilies. You can get them in Arizona and Texas and New Mexico. They do grow wild there, or you can buy them dried at most every Latin market. So the chiltepines are round, and they are favored in like Sonora and Baja and in Chihuahua. And then the bullet-shaped ones are more favored in Texas and Nuevo León and Coahuila and Tamaulipas. And so there's also kind of a weird divide, like in Nuevo León and Coahuila, they like the green ones. They prefer the green chili piquins to the fully ripe red ones. So what they'll do is, I mean, obviously, if you've got a chili plant that's producing, you just pick them off and use them. But it's kind of rad, right? You can take the chilies when they're green and bury them in salt. So you essentially salt preserve them, and then you can use them as if they're fresh, and they're like pre-seasoned, of course, and they're amazing. They stay moist and stay. I mean, obviously, they're salty as hell, but they're a really cool item. People will pickle them too, but I actually prefer the salt preservation method better. So it's almost like the devil's caper. So that would be another one. Another thing that you really ought to have in your pantry wise. that's a cool thing about this book is like a lot of it is just stuff you can get in the supermarket. So there are lots of sort of Phillips and add-ons that would make things a little bit cooler and better. But one of the beauties of this book is that damn near everything is going to be in your, not even in like a fancy dancy supermarket. They'll be in a, regular old supermarket.
That's cool. Any that you found that are symbolic to specific communities or stories that you came across? And like, also another curious note to add on to that is any differences within close geographic proximity, but rural versus urban settings. If there's like some traditions that may have changed or got lost when people moved in to cities or grew up in cities.
Yeah, I mean, fire is one of them. So a lot of, and actually it's funny because you'll see my friend Patty Hinich, she's a brilliant cook and she's one of the greatest ambassadors of Mexican food there is. She is from Mexico City and she lives in the DC area now. And if you watch her show and she's making salsa, she will boil things all the time. Obviously, she knows about the char. I mean, she knows more than I do about Mexican food, but like her DNA is sort of city, and you don't necessarily want to start a fire to start your evening meal in the city, and they do in the rural areas. So that presence of char and flame is much stronger in rural areas than it is in cities. Like carne asada, like a real carne asada is grilled over mesquite wood. You could do oak, but it's grilled over wood. But you will see carne asada just done on a flat top. It's not asada. It's nice, it's good, I'll eat it, but it's not the same. And so that's a big difference between rural and herbal. Rural and urban.
Don't worry, I'll throw more hard words at you.
Anti-disestablishmentarianism, longest word. I think another really interesting thing is you'll find ingredients that are just or something that's just that's that. So tepary beans is a good example. So tepary beans are they're-ish. So they're a different species of bean from like the pinto bean or black bean or something like that. So they're their own thing, and they're desert hardy, and they were domesticated by indigenous people in the Sonoran Desert a zillion years ago. I mean, probably 2,000 years ago, somewhere around there, maybe more. And they're a little bean, and they are a bean that's much higher in protein, and they do take a little longer to cook. So if I'm going to do something that's super Sonoran, whether it's Arizona or the state of Sonora in Mexico, I'm probably going to lean towards tepary beans, not because it's the exclusive bean of that area, but it's the special bean of that area. A lot of people in Sonora and Arizona will use regular pintos. But there's another, and this it gets a little bit outside the scope of the book, but only a little. There's a California bean called a pinquito, which is a little teeny pink bean, and it's imagine like a mini pinto but pink, and that is an ancient bean from Southern California that you really only see in places like Santa Maria. With there's an old vaquero tradition in San Luis Obispo County that's where this bean comes from. So you'll occasionally see a thing like that where the best beans in Nuevo Leon are bio beans. Canario beans are a big thing in Baja, which are obviously, as you might imagine, yellow. So you'll see that kind of stuff. You'll see different styles of tortillas. Like, I guarantee you, a Texan doesn't think that his tortillas are puffy, but I can assure you his tortillas are puffy, because compared to Sonoran, or even compared to some of the others on the other side of the border, they're puffy. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. And especially if what you're putting on the tortilla is stewy, which is why New Mexican flour tortillas are puffy as well.
Yeah.
Because you've got a stewy thing. And if you've got a really sort of a gossamer tortilla, it's going to go right through it. Another thing that's really surprised me was blue corn. So blue corn occupies a very specific north-south band. It goes all the way down to like the Pacific Ocean near like Oaxaca. So there's very famous Oaxacan blue corn. And then it kicks all the way up, and you see it in traces through Durango, and then the Tarahumara are masters of blue corn in Chihuahua. And then Chihuahua is just south of New Mexico. And many of you listening to this know that blue corn is a really big deal in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So this sort of blue corn band was really fascinating. And nobody's really been able to explain to me why it is so much of a north-south thing and it didn't sort of spread out east and west so much. And it could be climate, but the climates of Oaxaca and Chihuahua are very different. But I suspect it's cultural exchange.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing. So I looked this up. I'm doing research for the book. Blue corn has more nutrients than the other colors.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something nutritionally better about blue corn. So that might factor into it as well.
I wonder if migration, if there was a
Could be
population, because there's a lot of conversation about early arrival onto the Pacific side of Central America and Mexico, and I wonder if migration northward could have, like, if you had a special group of people that landed and grew an appreciation for the blue corn, and then they just kind of like slowly trickled north. But then
it's entirely possible.
It doesn't explain the east to west, and like unless there was some sort of conflict. But I mean, we could speculate about this, but it's fascinating.
Isn't it?
Just one corn seed making its way north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Talking about all these different seeds, I was just working on my vegetable garden before jumping on the podcast here. I was thinking about you. Do you have a lot of new stuff in your garden? I know you're in Minnesota rather than California now, but do you have new stuff in your garden that you found along the way through your research here?
I unfortunately don't have much because I learned that last year. I had lots of seeds, but I gave them to my friends in warmer climates because a great example was I had these amazing winter squash seeds from Sonora that make this big old calabaza, and time ran out on them last year. They never developed real. I mean, they were green in October, and so I switched. And I by the way, a side note is if you live in a warm climate and you want to grow indigenous crops, which I suggest you do because they're amazing, go to Native Seed Search. Native Seed Search is based out of Tucson. They're a nonprofit, and they do amazing work with biodiversity of seeds and crops and things. What I ended up doing is I took the same page, but up here in the north, and I have a lot of crops that are from the Lakota and the Mandan and the Arikara and the Hidatsa, because it's the same deal. I mean, these are heirloom seeds from very, very a long time ago, but they're geared for here, and so I kind of had to adapt to my new climate.
That makes sense. Kind of tying it back into your research for all this, how did you find some of these recipes? Like, were you just sidling up to people at the bar, going to restaurants, begging permission to enter Grandma's kitchen? Like, how did you find all these new recipes and ideas?
Yes.
Yes.
all of the above. All of the above. Plus, I think one of the things that makes Borderlands a little bit unique is I have a master's degree in history, so that experience taught me how to do research. So there's a gigantic bibliography in this book. I don't know that I've ever seen a bibliography as big as this in any cookbook. And it's several hundred written sources, almost all of them in Spanish. And so reading those things, this is kind of what I do for Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook in English, is if there's a dish that I want to do, I will, oftentimes I've eaten it, and oftentimes I know a little bit about it, but then I will do the research to say, okay, what makes this dish, and what are the ingredients that can't be in it, like tomato and gumbo. Like you can put tomato in gumbo, but it's Creole gumbo. But if you put tomato in a Cajun gumbo, everyone's going to laugh at you. So like that's an example of like a stopper ingredient. And then there are like the reverse. So like tacos gobernador in the book. So it was invented in Sinaloa and was very popular in the Pacific coast of Mexico. And it is always, always, always seafood, cheese, and some sort of peppers. After that, it's dealer's choice. It's supposed to be shrimp, but I've seen smoked fish. I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen flour tortillas and corn, blah, blah, blah. But there's sort of what makes a gobernador are those couple elements. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing that I did to restrict myself in writing this book, because I mean, if you look at this big bibliography, there's like, I don't know, 10,000 recipes that I could choose from. So with very few exceptions, I think one or two exceptions, I've eaten that dish in where it's from. So that was super important for me because as confident as I am in academic style research, that's not really what this book is. This book is a physical journey, and I wanted to make sure that the vast majority of everything that's in the book, I was served by somebody who makes it on the regular.
How many trips did you have to make down to Mexico, or to the Borderlands, I should say, to do this?
Like dozens and dozens. And I've been going to the border for over 20 years, and I've been, I don't know, it's a lot. To the point where like I know places now, and like, oh yeah, we're going to this town, or this is where we're going because it's going to be rad.
What are your top 3
places?
Yeah.
Casa Marte in La Paz in Baja. That's a pretty fantastic spot. There is a little place in Hermosillo that does the best bean and cheese burrito. And that's all it is. It's just a bean. It's like it's in the same village or section of town where they make all the coyotes, the Mexican Pop-Tart. There's just a stand out there, and they're making the flour tortillas right as you speak, and it's magic how they make them. And then you get one of those with just the best refried beans. I don't know what they put them in. I think they grind up angels because it's so good. It's so good, like with the ground angels and the extra cheese and some hot salsa. It's like, that's good. And all it is a bean and cheese burrito. And I think, you've got high end places like Casa Marte's kind of high end. Then you've got real high end places like Pangea in Nuevo León that are like pushing, or Sulawe in Chihuahua, which are like pushing the boundaries of Mexican food. And I absolutely love that because I take deep offense to the notion that Mexican food must be cheap, especially if you know anything about how to make it. It's very
labor intensive.
Yeah, I mean they are arguably the best sauce makers in the world. Looking at you, France, because France makes great sauces, but Mexico makes more great sauces, and there's certain sauces that they've been making, I don't know, for 3,000 years, and they're damn good. And so, I mean, there's a lot of love and time and effort and technique involved with making a lot of these things that I think a lot of people just might want to take note of. Next time you're like, this taco cost me $4. I'm like, do you realize what's on this taco? Like, took 4 days to make this taco.
Oh man, tacos! I just came back from lunch, but I'm already thinking about dinner. It's Tuesday too, so it's perfect.
Yeah. Although I'm actually cooking Cajun tonight. I'm making catfish etouffee.
Ooh,
oh nice!
Now you're speaking my language too.
Oh. Choctaw.
Yeah. Talk about French and Indigenous mixes. There you go.
Yeah, we caught a bunch of catfish up in North Dakota last weekend, so I'm going to cook some up.
Oh yeah,
I saw you hanging with Nate there.
Mm-hmm. Nate P. Yeah, he was on your show.
He was, yeah.
Was he a good boy?
We had fun. It was just he and I. But we played hook, line, and liar, like a game where we had to tell almost like two truths and lie, but we told two stories. One was true and one was false, and people had to guess which one was which. And he told a story about the Red River of the North and the ghoul. That's why I dropped a comment on his post when I saw you guys, and it was a quote from the ghoul of "Fishing's been real good down here." But I don't know. Did you guys see any ghosts while you were up there?
I mean, I see ghosts everywhere.
Speaking of that, we'll talk about since you did do a lot of traveling, and I kind of want to. I get this, a lot of people, I do a lot of travel internationally and stuff too, and people always talk about safety and security. You did a lot of traveling back and forth across the border. Any safety security concerns? Should people go visit? Like, what's the pulse?
It's a legit question because, especially in the north, there are places that there are a few like no-go areas, and one of them would be I would say one of them would be northern Tamaulipas. So that would be the part of Mexico that is just south of Brownsville. And I'm saying this on June 10th, 2025, and it could change in a week. But generally speaking, that's kind of a dicey area. Also, generally speaking, the basic rule is if you're looking for trouble in Mexico, you will find it. So if you're not, generally speaking, you're going to be fine. Another pro tip is to do all your driving in the daytime. Don't drive at night. And there's two reasons. One, there are bandits in some places, and that's a thing. It's not super common, but it could happen. And the other one is cows on the highway.
It's a fair concern as well. Like
a whole fucking herd of cows, like just sitting on the highway because it's warm. The asphalt's warm at night. And cows. So I would do all your driving in the daytime. So if you're going to do a road trip, I would plan to go from point A in the morning and then just have a fun time in the daytime and then be at your hotel like dinner time. And you're pretty good. And I've driven all over Mexico like that. It's not impossible that the cops could pull you over for a mordida, which is a bite. It's like, hey, you were speeding. Like, everyone speeds in Mexico. So it's like he just decided that he saw the gringos and usually be like, the speeding fine here is 200 pesos. And and the next thing you ask is, can I pay it here? And they're like, yes, you can. And like, here's 200 pesos. By the way, 200 pesos is $10. So
just do it.
Just do it. I mean, the reason why is because the fundamental reason why this happens is because the cops don't get paid enough to really make a decent living. So they're trying to make a living. And so the other meaning of like the mordida, because it's a bite, right? But everybody's got to eat. And so if you see that, that's what's going on. That's the subtext of it. They don't want to kidnap you or anything like that. They're underpaid and trying to make a living. I think knowing Spanish is important. It's the places that you can go in Mexico where you don't have to know Spanish kind of suck. Like, I have never really spent much of any time in Cabo San Lucas. I've spent a lot of time in Cabo San Jose, where you can actually get around in Spanish. Now, everyone speaks English in Cabo San Jose, but they're not going to immediately say, oh, gringo, I'm going to only speak in English to you, which is what they'll do in Cabo San Lucas. They'll do that in like all of the places like Cozumel or whatever. But that's not in the scope of this book. Generally speaking, if you're going to travel in the borderlands on their side of the border, you should speak some Spanish. Now, a lot of people speak English there, a lot. So, but the attempt, showing effort is very, very appreciated. They are not like the French, where they're like, you spoke it slightly incorrectly. I'm going to speak bad English to you and sneer, and that's not a thing in Mexico.
I felt the same way too when I was in Quebec. Like, it's very much the same. If you make the attempt and then it just switches to English and just naturally flows, like, nobody's really pretentious about it. And I'm wondering, if that's like a very common attribute to find along borderlands, either north or south, where you have difference in language.
It's a matter of respect. So if let's say I lived in Eagle Pass, Texas, which is the sister city to Piedras Negras. If I don't learn Spanish, I'm from there, I'm kind of a douche. Like, literally everyone in town speaks Spanish. So you're the neighborhood kids that you grow up with, like, even before you go to school, are speaking English and Spanish. So it's a bilingual community, and so most people who are from there can at least get around in the other language. And it's the people who kind of move there from somewhere else who are like, I'm not going to speak Spanish. And then be like, well,
good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Nice guy.
So I guess we'll sort of looking towards the tail end of the show here. What do you hope readers will take away after exploring the stories and recipes? We've touched on we've covered a lot of ground, I think, as you did in the book. But what's the big hope, the big dream outside what we've talked about already that you hope people walk away with?
I think people really, from a strict cooking perspective, I really hope that people read this book and get absolutely jazzed about the dishes. And it's a thing that there are two kind of big takeaways that they can get out of this. One, Tex-Mex doesn't suck, which is one, because the Texas dishes I put in there are baller. And two, that northern Mexican food doesn't suck, because everybody I know is like, oh yes, Oaxaca's so great, and oh, Yucatan is so great, and oh, Mexico City and Puebla are so great, and they are. So is Michoacan. So is Jalisco. But the North rocks. They're like, if you make the carne asada recipe in this book, it's 4 pages, because I'm teaching you how to make a real. Okay, so side note. So carne asada is like barbecue. You make carne asada at a carne asada, and just like in English, you throw it. Echado una carne asada, and so that it's this cultural event, and it has to be over fire. Like, if it's a whole ritual, and Sonora does it the best, but everywhere in the North does good carne asada. And I want people to say after they read this, like, oh, that's what carne asada is. This is, because a lot of Mexico files here in this country are like, oh, carne asada. It's like only dumb gringos eat that, and like, because I want to eat the more like fancy thing. Like, good, eat it. It's great. And I mean, I love it too. But don't sleep on carne asada, and don't sleep on things like mollejas, the barbecued sweetbreads, and don't sleep on, a fish taco. Like the iconic fish taco of the Pacific Coast. Like,
I love fish tacos.
I mean, there's La Paz fish tacos, there's Ensenada fish tacos, there's San Diego fish tacos, and they're all fantastic. And it's a little bit of a case of the food is much simpler than Oaxaca or Yucatan or Puebla. Much simpler, but it's just as good. And I would argue that the presence of restriction in terms of ingredient and climate makes them better cooks. Because
makes sense.
If you live in Oaxaca, you can grow anything. Like, everything grows. It's like, let's play with all these cool shit. And like, this is like California. Like, when I lived in California, I mean, a talking chimp can do fresh, seasonal, and local. Like, because there's literally something fresh, seasonal, local in California every freaking month of the year, every week of the year, right? It's like, oh god, what am I going to do in February? Well, that's when the kiwis come out, and like there's something every week there, and so now this is why I love Minnesota, because like I'm doing shit now, because if I don't do it now and preserve it, like I'm salting down those catfish eggs from this weekend. And I'm going to salt them and dry them and make catfish botarga and grate it over pasta in the middle of winter. So I'm thinking all of this time about stuff that I can do now for them. And in the Borderlands, they're doing the same thing, because their seasons are pretty short. It's dry as hell. So they dry things. And so their stocking away for later is always dehydrating and drying and smoking. And so there's this huge smoked fish tradition in the Pacific, which I've not seen or heard of smoked fish anywhere else in Mexico. I mean, there's one thing that they do in central Mexico with like little fish like called charales. But generally speaking, like the Pacific guys, they know how to smoke fish, and especially Baja. And so those are the things that I hope people are coming take away from it, in the sense that, wow, this is so much cooler than I would have thought. And then just get into it and make it your own. Because one of the things I do structurally with a book is give people options. So yeah, it might be a beef dish, but I have little icons, just like I did in Pheasant Quail Cottontail, where you could use goat, you could use venison, you could use moose. Use what you got, because it's a lot of these dishes are adaptable.
Like your enchilada one.
Yeah.
I looked at it, I was like, oh wow, that's open to a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically like meat and a damn tortilla with a sauce, right? So like, it could be freaking beaver meat if you're in Canada. I mean, like, go for it. So, and that's the coolest thing about Mexican food in general. Like, there's some elements of Spanish food that are dogmatic. Italian food is super dogmatic. French food is very dogmatic. And it drives me batty sometimes. It's like, that is not that dish. I'm like, it's better, actually, is what it is. And in Mexico, they're like, wouldn't it be great if we did this to that? And then the other guy's like, "Ah, way," and they just do it, and they make some brand new thing, and like the whole world benefits. Case in point, birria is from Jalisco. The quesabirria taco is from Tijuana. Mm-hmm. Made by a guy from Jalisco, but in Tijuana, because Tijuana is this melting pot of all the different people from Mexico. And it's like, hey, look at this. Let's do all this cool shit. And that's what makes the border so cool.
That's a really cool thing about Mexican cooking, is like old school charm and techniques and recipes and everything, with a new world approach to like trying new things, and doesn't have that stodginess, I find, which I've always appreciated about the cuisine.
I'm going to say this. It's ironic that a lot of the world's major ingredients are coming from this geolocation and spread around the world, and everybody gets
coincidence? I think not.
Yeah, everybody gets real uppity about what they put in things, except for the people that created the things.
Yeah.
So, well, all right. Where can people go to get the book? What's the best way?
There are two good ways. The fastest way is Amazon. And, obviously you're helping a billionaire, but that is the most widespread way to get it, is on Amazon.com. However, especially if you are listening to this in the United States, you can get it directly off my website, and that helps the little guy, because, I'm not a very tall person. And so if you get it on the website, which is huntgathercook.com, you'll see right at the top of the nav bar, new cookbook. And if you buy it from me directly, it's actually pretty much the same price as Amazon. I can't get it to you quite as fast, because I have to ship it in normal methods, and Amazon uses like lasers and things to ship things. It's really weird.
Sharks with lasers.
Sharks with lasers. But if you buy it directly from my place at huntgathercook.com, you help a little guy out. It doesn't cost much more, if anything more. And you can also buy all of my other books there directly as well.
Sweet. And you're at the beginning of a book tour, right? Mm-hmm. What are some of your major stops?
Kind of everywhere. It's going to be my first real deal book tour since 2018. So I've got about 35 events planned so far. I'm starting in Minnesota and North Dakota. I'm going to do a little stop in Fargo. But I'm going to be all over the Midwest, all over the Northeast, and all over the Pacific Northwest in the summertime. And then once we get closer to Labor Day, I'm going to kind of park myself in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California. I'll probably hit places like Atlanta as well. I'm not going to be all over the American South, because I will, just because you kind of have to. But I really, really want to spend a lot of time in Texas in October, November, and Arizona and New Mexico for two reasons. One, that's the Borderlands. But B, I would much rather be in Texas in October than in August.
Yeah.
So right now, if you go on the same website on huntgathercook.com, you will see next to the cookbook tag a book tour tag. And so if you hit that, I update that on an almost daily basis. So that's really where you're going to find the most updated information about where I'll be. But you can also follow me on social media, and I post about my events pretty much on the regular. Finally, the best way, the most ideal way to know when I'm going to be in your area is to join my mailing list. And you can do that. You can do that either on huntgathercook.com, or you can do that on my Substack, which is called To the Bone.
I highly recommend people sign up for Hank's Substack. It's always a really enjoyable read. You can sign up for free, or you can pay to get more content. And I can't recommend it enough. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Adam, last thoughts before we head out?
I'm just thinking about tacos and Mexican food and Borderlands and just hungry. My thoughts are all just informed hunger. I'm excited to see the book, and I just can't wait to cook some stuff in it.
No, I'm looking forward to it. I've got some travel the rest of this week up to Montana, but when I come back, I'm going to be cooking lots of Mexican food or Borderland food.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, Hank, thanks for coming on so much. I appreciate it. It's always an awesome time to chat and hang out and to see your new projects and to hear about them. So thanks for sharing it with us.
Thanks you for having me on. This has been fun.
Absolutely. For everyone out there, please head over, give Hank a follow on his social media. Make sure you're following Harvesting Nature, The Intrepid Eater, so you can stay abreast of all the cool things happening in the wild food world. And then please, whatever podcast platform you listen to, punch that 5-star button. Tell us we're doing right, or tell us that you don't like tacos, and we'll unfriend each other.
If you don't tacos, then die!
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.